Everyone, this is Miss Jonas. I'm recording this tutorial video to show you how to use a tool called Scribble to help you analyze primary source documents. I will also be using a new document analysis strategy called SOAPSTone. So one of the reasons I've decided to record this as a tutorial video is that we're working in the library right now and it's difficult to teach live here. Secondly, this is important and I want to make sure that anyone that is absent can get the information they need. And thirdly, this allows you to work on your own pace. So let's say you miss something or you want to pause and think about something I just said. You can always hit pause or rewind and then go back to what you need to. All right, so keep that in mind. So first I'm going to show you what I mean by SOAPSTone. SOAPSTone is actually an acronym. Here's what it stands for: subject, occasion, audience, purpose, speaker, and then tone. And each part of the acronym prompts you to think about a certain aspect of a document that you're reading. After you think about each of these aspects of the document, you'll be able to do more analysis and think more deeply about the meaning of what you just read. All right, so we're going to be using that to analyze documents for part 2 of the benchmark. I'm also going to be showing you a new tool that I think Ms. Hall introduced to you in tech, but you will now start using. It's called Scribble. The way that you access Scribble is that you have to put in your bookmarks, click on Scribble, and you'll see a toolbar that shows up on any web page you are on. So Scribble allows you to annotate, highlight, and take notes on any web page and then save it later with all your notes. And this allows you to get rid of a lot of in-between work, maybe copying and pasting to Google Docs and all that stuff. All right, so we're going to use SOAPSTone. I'm going to analyze this primary source document that you see here. I'm going to be using Scribble to take notes. All right, so I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to break it up a little bit. I have a very corny joke. Here it goes. Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he had no body to go with. Ah, get it? Fun fact, that's the only joke I've ever memorized, and I learned it from a Laffy Taffy candy sometime in high school. Feel free to use it and tell it to as many people. It's a pretty funny one. I like it. All right, so back to business here. So the document that I decided to analyze for you is by John Quincy Adams. All right, it's very short. So I'm just going to read through it, and I'm going to use SOAPSTone to help guide my notes. All right. So this is by John Quincy Adams, expressed the following in a letter dated November 19th, 1839, written to and published in the New York Journal of Commerce. All right, so here we go. I'm going to write an annotation here. The date, which is part of the occasion. All right, so date written. And I know this was a couple of months after the Amistad was captured in the United States. All right, so important here for these little notes, you want to hit the boxes to minimize, not the X, because X deletes it. Very confusing. All right, so you see there's my annotation. It's published in the New York Journal of Commerce. All right. So here, this gives me part of my audience. I know that the readers will mostly be New Yorkers and will also be business-minded. All right. Now, I was interested in learning more about this publication to see what the audience was like, and I actually learned from Wikipedia, yes, it's okay to use Wikipedia for quick searches like this, that the Journal of Commerce, JOC for short here, they were fervent abolitionists. All right, so we know that the audience for this journal were abolitionists. So they would be against slavery. They would want slavery to end. All right, cool. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to start reading the source. I already know a lot before reading the source. Oh yeah, and over here, of course, is our author or speaker / author. We know he was an former president. Okay. And he was a congressperson at the time of the article or the letter. This is a letter to the newspaper, which I can assume would be published in the newspaper. All right, we know a lot already before we read it. Here we go. The Africans of the Amistad were cast upon our coast in a condition perhaps as calamitous as could befall human beings, not by their own will, not with any intention hostile or predatory on their part, not even by the act of God as in the case of shipwrecked, but by their own ignorance of navigation and the deception of one of their oppressors whom they had overpowered and whose life they had spared to enable them by his knowledge of navigation to reach their native land. All right, I'm going to pause there. I'm going to go back to our SOAPSTone. So I already get a hint here of the subject of this primary source document. The subject is to talk about the Africans of the Amistad. The occasion is that they were found off the coast of New York. And I'm getting a little bit of the tone here. What are some of the things that tell me the tone? Things like calamitous, right? That word is a very powerful word and sort of speaks to how horrible the conditions were for the Africans. Using things like oppressors whom they overpowered, right? Saying that the Africans were oppressed already tells us a little bit of his perspective, right? He's obviously on the side of the Africans trying to gain sympathy for them. All right, here we go. I'm going to continue reading. They were victims of the African slave trade, recently imported into the island of Cuba in gross violation of the laws of the island and of Spain, and by acts by which our own laws have made piracy punishable with death. They had indicated their natural right to liberty by conspiracy, insurrection, homicide, and capture, and they were accused by the 2 Cuban Spaniards embarked with them in the ship of murder and piracy. And they were claimed by the same 2 Cuban Spaniards accessories after the fact to the slave trade piracy, by which they had been brought from Africa to Cuba as their property, because they had brought them from slave trade pirates. All right, pause. What in the world did Quincy Adams just say here? Well, he's saying 2 things, right? So he's saying that the Africans, they were the victims of the slave trade. And they used conspiracy, insurrection, homicide, and capture to gain their natural right of liberty, all right? So this tells us, I'm going to write a note here, the tone is abolitionist and trying to convince the readers of the rights of the Africans of the Amistad, all right? He's using words like natural right to liberty, right? He's saying here that the Africans had the right to even murder their oppressors in order to gain their natural right to liberty. But then he's also saying that the 2 Cuban Spaniards, that they actually put the same accusations on the Africans. They said that the Africans should be charged with murder and they should be charged with piracy because of how they rebelled on the ship. All right, so he's looking more favorably at the Africans than the Cubans in here. All right, let's continue. They knew nothing of the Constitution, laws, or language of the country upon which they were thus thrown, and accused as pirates and murderers. Claimed as slaves of the very men who were their captives, they were deprived even of the faculty of speech in their own defense. This condition was sorely calamitous. It claimed from the humanity of a civilized nation compassion. It claimed from brotherly love of a Christian land sympathy. It claimed from a republic professing reverence for the rights of man justice. And what have we done? All right, so here, let's pause again. John Quincy Adams, it reminds his readers of the Constitution, right? The Constitution that claims equal rights for all men. And he's saying that this case is actually making the United States hypocrites, right? Saying that this is a land of brotherly love, right? And this case has ripped us this land of sympathy. It's saying that this is a country that claims to be a republic that sort of looks at the right of man and claims to honor that. He's saying that this case robs them of this justice, all right? So what have we done? Here, we really get a sense of the tone, right? The tone here is trying to, again, convince readers of the wrongs that the Amistad case proves, right? Maybe even trying to incite some guilt, right, about the hypocrisy, right? So again, this question alone tells us a lot about the tone. All right, final paragraph. Here we go. Stay with me. A naval officer of the United States seizes them, their ship and cargo with themselves, tramples on the territorial jurisdiction of the state of New York. By seizing, disarming, and sending on board their ship without warrant of arrest, several of them whom he found on shore, releases their captives, admits the claim of the two captives to 50 masters as their slaves, and claims salvage for restoring them to servitude. So he's talking here about the naval officer that found them and seized the ship and cargo, right? He's claiming all these things, this officer. Here we go again. They are then brought before a court of the United States, at once upon the charge of piracy and murder, upon a claim to them as slaves, and upon a claim against their pretended masters for salvage, by kidnapping them again into slavery. All right, so here, again, shows sympathy for the Africans. He's saying that they were put again into slavery. Remember, he reminds us that they already claimed their freedom by rebelling on the ship, right? So this is by being captured again, they're being put into slavery again. Let's continue. The circuit judge decides that the United States do not exercise the right of all other civilized nations to the piracies committed in foreign vessels, that he thereupon cannot try them for piracy or murder, but the district court may try whether they are slaves or not. As it is doubtful whether this trial will be held in Connecticut or New York, and it must take time to ascertain in which, they shall in the meantime be held as slaves to abide the issue. All right, so here he's saying because the courts are not resolving the issue fast enough, that the Africans from the Amistad will be held as slaves until that's resolved. All right, and then he ends here. Is this compassion? Is this sympathy? Is it justice? But here, the case now stands. All right, so here we get a sense of the purpose. Okay, let's remind ourselves what the SOAPSTone is. So here, purpose, right? Why is he writing this? He's trying to possibly, I would say, speed up the process of the trial, right? He's just said that they're sort of delaying in the trial, trying to get citizens to put pressure on the government, okay? So he's trying to gain sympathy for the Africans, just communicating their story. He's obviously not very much telling the story of the Cubans and their side, right? He's definitely trying to help the Africans here in the case. So some other things that I learned from this that's different from the movie. This is by John Quincy Adams, written November 19th, 1939. In the movie, it seems like, oh, John Quincy Adams doesn't get involved until the Supreme Court case in 1840. But we see he's actually from the beginning working to support the case. Okay? Let's see, we've gone over each one of these briefly in my talk. I haven't written notes for all of them, but as you use Scribble, you should definitely write as many notes as you can. Now here's the cool part. Let's say I'm done all my annotations. I will now save. You see down here, I'm going to save this. Oh, I have to sign in. Sign in. No one steal my password. All right, here we go. Well, I have to put the whole address. Excuse me. There we go. All right, now I'm going to save it, and I'm going to give it a page name. I'm going to say John Quincy Adams letter to New York Journal. And here I'm going to write a tag. I'm going to say this is for my Q2 benchmark, quarter 2 benchmark. I'm going to save it. All right. Now, afterwards, let's say I want to see it in my library. This little picture of a building here takes me to my library. All right. And see here, John Quincy Adams, letter to New York Journal. I can open it up. I can do many things with this. Let's say I want to click on it and create a summary. All right. And here, check it out. All my notes attached with the things that I highlighted. Okay. Here we go. I have quotes. I have my notes and my analysis. And there's my SOAPSTone. All right, guys. So this was longer than I thought. Hopefully this is useful to you and cuts out a lot of work. I'm going to ask you to do a couple of these on Scribble as you do research for your quarter 2 benchmark. All right, thank you.